So good afternoon, everyone. In this chapter 11, we will discuss about culture and health. So this chapter explores how cultural factors sway physical health and disease processes and investigates our attempts to understand genetic, psychosocial, and sociocultural influences. We begin with an examination of cultural differences in the definition of health and present three indicators of health worldwide: the life expectancy, infant mortality, and subjective well-being. So, alam naman natin na ang major rule ng psychology is to improve the lives of the people we touch, whether through research, service, or provision of primary or secondary health care. So, nandun yung pagtingin natin kung paano natin mapiprevent, the diagnose and treat disease, and foster positive state of being in balance with others and the environment. So from anthropological and sociological perspective, disease refers to a malfunctioning or maladaptation of biologic and psychophysiologic processes in the individual. So disease is something that needs to be cured, such as infection, injury, toxic exposure, cell degeneration. So while illness refers to the personal, interpersonal, and cultural reactions to disease or discomfort. Illness is something that needs to be managed, such as feeling of pain, discomfort, distress, weaknesses, fatigue, or more. So comparison across culture. So syempre, before we look at how culture influences health and disease processes, we need to examine uh, uh, exactly what we mean by health. So more than 60 years ago, the World Health Organization developed a definition at the International Health Conference in which 61 countries were represented. They defined health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So this definition of health is still used by the World Health Organization today. So dito makikita natin yung iba't ibang definition ng health ng different culture. So sa Western countries, views of health have been heavily influenced by biomedical model. So ang biomedical model of health and disease, this model views disease as resulting from a specific identifiable cause such as pathogen. So yung tinatawag na pathogen, ito yung nakakahawang sakit tulad ng virus or bacteria, tulad ng nararanasan natin ngayon. Yung nakakahawang sakit tulad ng yung ngayon na tinatawag natin na coronavirus. And also this model is a genetic or developmental abnormality. Ito naman yung mga being born with a mutated gene, or physical insult such as being exposed to a carcinogen, a cancer-producing agent. So from the perspective of the traditional biomedical model, the biological root of disease is primary, and subsequently treatment focuses on addressing biological aspect of the disease. However, kiniticize to ni Engel na kung saan pinopose naman niya yung biopsychosocial model to understand health and disease, na kung saan hindi lang daw biological, kundi kundi nakasakop nito yung social and psychological factors. Kasi when you say biological, this means genetic, biological and physiological functioning of the body. And when you say social, this means lifestyles, activities, quality of relationship, living conditions such as poverty. So when you say psychological naman, this means beliefs and attitude toward health, emotions, feeling of despair, positive thinking. All are important for a more accurate and complete understanding of health and psychosocial model. Actually, may mga different culture na iba yung concept ng health. Tulad nung sa China, yung concept ng health sa China is based on religion and philosophy, focuses on the principle of yin and yang, which represent negative and positive energies. So, naniniwala ang mga Chinese na yung kanilang bodies are made up of elements of yin and yang. So, pag daw balance yung yin and yang mo, nagre-result daw to in good health. Samantalang pag imbalance yung, halimbawa, too much yin or too much yang, nagli-leads to poor health. So many things can disturb this balance. Halimbawa, sa pagkain natin ng sobra from one of the elements or a change in social relationship, yung weather, yung season, or even supernatural forces. So maintaining balance involves not only the mind and body, but also the spirit and the natural environment. So from the Chinese perspective, yung concept ng health is not confined to the individual, but encompasses the surrounding relationship and environment. A view of health that is holistic. So yung holistic, ito yung focus is on the interconnection between the individual, his or her relationship, environment, and spiritual world. So another type of balance is yung common interest of disease in many Latin American cultures. Yung concentrates on hot and cold. These terms do not refer to temperature, but to the intrinsic power of different substances in the body. So some illness or state are hot, others cold. So a person who is in a hot condition is given cold foods to counteract the situation, and vice versa dun sa a person who is in a cold condition. So similar lang to ng concept ng Chinese ng yin and yang. So in many cultures then, we often hear about the importance of having balanced diet and a balanced lifestyle. So the concept of homeostasis is all about balance, maintaining steady, stable functioning in our bodies when there are changes in the environment. And when our bodies cannot maintain homeostasis over time, illness and disease may result. So although there are differences across cultures in how different is conceived, there are also commonalities such as the notion of balance and imbalance that permit discussion of health. So from this a brief review of how different cultures define health, we can see how different beliefs of what leads to good health will affect how disease are diagnosed and treated. So syempre, if we believe that health is determined primarily by biological disturbances and individual choices, syempre yung treatment may primarily focus on individual level factors. So pag naman if we believe that treatment may primarily focus on correcting those relationship, if we believe that health is determined by an individual's relationship with others, nature and supernatural forces, treatment may primarily focus on correcting those relationships. So importantly, our choices of coping and treatment are closely tied to our attributions of the causes determining health, illness, and disease. So concept of health may differ not only between cultures but also within a pluralistic culture such as the United States or Canada. So makikita nyo dito sa figure 11.1, show the circle of wellness, a model of health as conceptualized by Native American. The figure showed that in contrast to the biopsychosocial model, yung spiritual well-being is central or the focal point in other domains that contribute of health. Halimbawa, yung sa definition ng World Health Organization, di ba? Includes lang is physical, mental, and social well-being. Yung spiritual well-being is hindi na-mention. Indeed, there is a growing field called complementary and alternative medicine that incorporates medical and healthcare system and practices that are not considered conventional medicine to treat illness and promote health. So, ang example ng complementary and alternative medicine is yung acupuncture, homeopathy, yoga, herbal medicine, and spiritual healing. So, according to the U.S. National Health Interview Survey, the percentage of U.S. adults doing yoga, one of the most popular complementary and alternative medicine practices, has steadily increased in the last decade. So, sa figure 11.2, yung percentage of U.S. adults reporting doing yoga in the last year, in each age group, there is an increase between 2002 and 2012 with the largest increase in the 18 to 44 age group, almost doubling in the last decade. So dito makikita talaga natin yung mga ibang culture sa makikita talaga natin na yung ibang culture is iba yung definition or focus ng health. Katulad 'di ba nung sa biomedical model, focus siya is sa biological, hindi katulad sa biopsychosocial model na hindi lang biological, pati na rin yung social and psychosocial. Yung sa holistic, yung sa interconnection between the individual, his or her relationship, environment, and spiritual spiritual world. So next is 3 indicators of health worldwide: life expectancy, infant mortality, and subjective well-being. So yung life expectancy refers to the average number of years a person is expected to live from birth. So makikita nyo naman dito sa 11.3 na show the average life expectancy for selected countries estimated for 2014. A comparison of 223 countries showed that the countries with the longest average life expectancy were Monaco, Macau, Japan, Singapore, San Marino, Andorra, Hong Kong, Switzerland, Australia, US. And countries with the shortest life expectancy were Switzerland, Afghanistan, South Africa, and Chad. So bakit kaya magkakaiba ang life expectancy ng bawat bansa? Because drastic differences in life expectancy are present due to differences in wealth and resources around the world. Yung may mataas na result ng life expectancy dahil isa sila sa wealthier country na kung saan may enough resources sila and advanced technology to maintain health and prevent and treat disease. So in contrast dun sa mga poorer nations with the fewest resources are more likely to suffer hunger, malnutrition, AIDS, and other disease, and lack of access to basics for survival such as clean water, sanitary, waste removal, vaccination, and other medications. Nation experiencing war and other disaster experiencing disruptions that challenge survival, those life expectancy is shortened. So disparity in life expectancies can be even greater within one country. In the United States, for instance, life expectancy differs by ethnicity, which is usually confounded with a socioeconomic status. Great disparities across countries in average life expectancy mean that possibilities for good health and a long life are enjoyed by people in some countries but not others. So next natin is infant mortality. Infant mortality is defined as the number of infant deaths, 1 year old or younger, per 1,000 live births. Figure 11.4 show the infant mortality rates for selected countries estimated for 2014 comparing across to 224 countries. So Afghanistan, Mali, and Somalia had the highest rates of infant mortality, while Norway, Japan, and Monaco had the lowest. So life expectancy and infant mortality rates are broad indicators of health that show diversity in health outcomes around the world. A large part of these differences can be attributed to resources that ensure access to good nutrition, healthcare, and treatment. So gaya ng sabi ko sa life expectancy, dito sa infant mortality, yung may mga lowest rates of infant mortality, sila yung may mga access to have a good health, na meron silang enough resources para ma-prevent or ma-treat yung disease. So, hindi katulad dun sa mga may mga highest rate ng infant mortality dahil sa kawalan ng mga kanilang pangangailangan, wala silang enough resources to access to have a good health. So, to add to these objective indicators of health, researchers have focused more recently on an important subjective indicator of health, sa happiness or subjective well-being. So in contrast naman sa life expectancy and infant mortality, subjective well-being focuses on one's perception and self-judgments of health and well-being. Subjective well-being encompasses a person's feeling of happiness and life satisfactions. State the importance of this subjective aspect of health, so positively related to physical health. So people reporting higher subjective well-being have stronger immune system, fewer heart attacks, and less artery blockage. So tend to engage in healthier lifestyles. Higher subjective well-being is predicted by material wealth, one sense of autonomy and connections to others. So makikita ninyo sa 11.5, sa figure 11.5, show levels of subjective well-being in relation to per capita gross domestic product. So across 88 countries, an interesting pattern emerged. The Latin American countries report higher subjective well-being than would be expected based on their GDP. So the former communist countries lower subjective well-being than would be expected. Those economic factors account for some but not all of the variation in level of happiness across countries. So recent work on subjective well-being showed that other non-material factors such as feeling respected, having social support from friends and family, and feeling satisfied with the amount of freedom one has in life are all related to greater subjective well-being across many cultures. So those in addition to have enough material resources, our sense of autonomy and connection to others are essential to our happiness. So example, si Britney, yung subjective well-being niya is tumaas dahil sa non-material factors. Naramdaman yung feeling respected, family, having social support from her friends and family. So, di ba sabi, pag higher subjective well-being, have stronger immune system, fewer heart attacks. Fewer heart attacks. So next natin is genetic influence of physical health and disease. So while some disease can be linked to mutation of a single gene, halimbawa cystic fibrosis, sickle cell anemia, so most diseases are linked to complex multiple factors that include mutations in multiple genes that interact with environmental factors. Halimbawa, yung stress, diet, health-related behaviors. Some of the common complex gene diseases are cancer, high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. So yung sa The Human Genome Project, ito yung international collaboration to identify all 20,000 to 25,000 gene for exploring the role of genetic to understand disease. So in the last decade, a new field of inquiry adopt this type of complex, multi-level, and interdisciplinary approach, namely cultural neuroscience. Researchers in this field combine recent advances in neuroscience with principle of cultural psychology and population genetics to understand the dynamic relation among culture, behavior, mind, brain, and genes. So makikita nyo naman sa figure 11.6, a leading theories and research in cultural neuroscience study why some culture emphasize individualism versus collectivism as a result of both environmental factors. Halimbawa yung sa pathogen prevalence in genetic selection. Her study suggests that people living in areas around the world with a higher prevalence of infectious disease, such as in hotter climates, are more likely to be more collectivistically oriented. Being more collectivistically oriented emphasizes connection with in-group members, which may serve as a way to reduce the spread of infectious disease coming from out-groups. So studies in cultural neuroscience then aim to uncover how cultural genetic selection and environment pressure interact, leading to cultural traits such as holding more individualistic or collectivistic orientation that are adaptive for a particular environment. Ideally, future research should adopt multi-level interdisciplinary research effort to clarify the complex relation of how genes, environment, and culture interact and contribute to health and disease. So, ang halimbawa natin is yung sa sickle cell anemia. Common ito sa mga African American and Mediterranean population compared sa Northern European na ang common naman sa kanila is cystic fibrosis. Because human living in the same geographical area tend to be more genetically similar to one another. individual of a particular racial or cultural background are not consistently genetically similar to other individuals of the same racial or cultural background. Indeed, there appears to be more genetic variation within racial and cultural group than between. So next natin is yung sa psychosocial influence on health and disease. So some of the earliest research on psychosocial factors in health and disease processes examine the relationship between social isolation or social support and that. One of the best known studies in this area is the Alameda County study. So yung Alameda County study was one of the first to demonstrate clearly the enormous impact that psychosocial factors have in the maintenance of physical health. Since then, many studies have found the same pattern. Individuals with few social support tend to have poorer health. So further, it is the perception of having few social support or feeling lonely. That is important. Some people who have few supports are not lonely, and some people with many supports do feel lonely. So current reviews show that feelings lonely is linked to a host of health problems. So people who report being lonely at more periods of time in their lives, such as during childhood, adolescence, and young adulthood, age faster on a number of indicators, including body mass index, systolic blood pressure, cholesterol levels, and maximum oxygen consumption. All of these indicators are linked to cardiovascular health risks, such as coronary heart disease, hypertension, and stroke. It truly is the case that loneliness weakens the heart. So, yung example natin is, halimbawa, si Britney and Justron. Yung sa socio-economic ni Justron, na kung saan stable yung income niya, nafe-feel niya yung support ng family niya, na kung saan hindi niya nafe-feel na mag-isa siya, yun, nag-result siya ng in good health. Samantalang compare sa socio-economic ni Britney na hindi stable yung income niya, hindi niya nararamdaman yung support ng family or friends niya, feeling niya mag-isa siya, and nandun yung pakiramdam na stress or nadidepress or hopeless siya, doon nagli-leads siya ng to poor health. So in multicultural countries such as the United States and the United Kingdom, researchers have focused on health disparities. So health disparities are differences in health outcomes by group, for instance, between males and females, people of different ethnicities, and people of lower and higher socioeconomic status. Disparity refers to the fact that one group shows worse or better health outcomes compared to another. So health disparities can result from social factors such as a person's level of education, income, or occupational status. So that's also Miss Orita will continue this report. Thank you for listening.